one thing I tell people, especially if you're a high-profile person, never post in real time, obviously. If you're going to Disneyland, do that, post the next day. It's a personal choice. Some people feel like I want to live my life. I mean, I actually sometimes feel sorry for famous people because they got the fame because they want to be an actor, but they didn't want to necessarily be a public figure. So they walk a fine line.
Welcome to the I Own It podcast with Ben Reinberg.
We are live in Laguna Beach at the Ben Reinberg I Own It studios today, and we just have an incredible guest this afternoon on Saturday, and I'm really excited for him. He came down from Los Angeles, spent some time with us. He is an entrepreneur, and we'll get into his background, and just spectacular human being. Bruce Cardenas, welcome so much to the I Own It show. It's such a pleasure, and thanks for coming down.
Oh no, thank you, Ben. This is great. Who's not going to go to Laguna Beach on a Saturday, right?
Oh, it's the best.
Other than the rain, it's still beautiful.
Oh, it's gorgeous here. So let's start by sharing more of context of your background, okay? And let our audience know you've done a lot of interesting things. You're in the Marines, bodybuilding, LAPD. I have to read this because it's a long list. Corporate executive protection, nutrition business and products, a new nutrition company you just launched.
Yeah. Oh, shit, sorry.
And see, that's how busy you are. People are calling.
Sorry.
No problem. So share the details of your story because I think it's phenomenal.
No, I appreciate that. And I have done a lot of things. I guess I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up, right? I don't know how far back we want to go, but I was a middle-class kid growing up in New Jersey, and I was one of five. I was the middle child, and I always aspired to be a police officer. That was my dream. My uncle was a police officer. My neighbor was a state trooper. And honestly, New Jersey was my life. When you grow up someplace, you think that's the world. And I remember when I turned 9, I got out of high school, kind of not sure what I was going to do, dabbling around with jobs, and the police department was only a 6-man department. I knew them all. Went and met with the chief and said, I really want to be a police officer. What do I need to do? In his own way, he said, you're young, you're immature, you're not ready. But if you go in the Marine Corps, I'll hire you when you get out. So I grabbed my best friend and said, we need to go in the Marine Corps. Not any other branch of the Marine Corps. So we basically went in the Marine Corps, realized there was a big world out there. And not that I don't miss New Jersey occasionally, but there was a lot of opportunities. And the Marine Corps exposed me to world travel. I was on a security detail for the general of the Marine Corps. And I just learned life, right? I grew up in a very fast way. And that ended up getting me to Los Angeles. I came to Los Angeles for a powerlifting meet when I was in the Marine Corps in Camp Pendleton. And it was a career day on base. Different companies, CHP, IBM. And I was like, wow, the weather's beautiful. The people are beautiful. And I can get paid to live here. So I joined LAPD. And that was a childhood dream. And that's where it all started, to be in California.
Okay. And then you're an executive at Quest Nutrition for 10 years.
Correct.
Okay.
And that just happened serendipitously. I could tell you how that happened, but
you were a key driver in Quest being acquired for billions of dollars a few years ago.
Atkins acquired them 3 years ago.
Yeah,
for $1 billion cash.
Share more about your story with Quest.
Well, honestly, Quest happened very serendipitous. I left the police department because I started a pretty successful bodyguard business, was doing extremely well, and I was working out at a local gym like an Equinox, and the founder of Quest, she goes by Quest Creator, Shannon, worked out at the gym. We went small talk, hey, you see the same face at the gym, and I remember one day she gave me a protein bar. I said, you need to try this. You work out, and saw her the next week. Said the bar was amazing, and I said, by the way, if you have any extra bars, I'm doing a detail up at Riviera Country Club for some celebrities. I'm doing security, and my friend's running the event, and so if you get me some product, I'll get in the players' bags. And they were like, oh my God. So she delivered it to my house. It may be 100 bars. Got to the event, and I talked to my friend who's a publicist and said, listen, I'm going to be busy working, but how do I get this in everybody's hands? And it's really weird because I wasn't a publicist, I wasn't a marketing person, but I was like, I got to get this in people's hands. So at the time, and it was actually before Instagram, before Twitter, Facebook just started, and she got some people to do some interviews on camera on the red carpet, trying the bars. I got it all documented, and I sent it to the founders, and that kind of started our relationship. I got it into people's hands, and for about 9 months while I was doing my security business, I would help them in the afternoon. Got on the set of Extra, Mario Lopez, Jessica Simpson, people that I was protecting, I was basically sending Quest bars to.
Oh, that's smart.
And after about 9 months, Ron, the founder, Shannon's husband, took me to lunch and said, listen, we're stealing from you. You're doing far too much for us, and we're not paying you. We're gonna put you on the payroll. And he said, just give it to charity, do whatever you want, but we're putting you on the payroll. started paying me, and then there was something. There's a work ethic thing in me, maybe something I learned from my father. But once I started getting compensated, I was like, oh man, now I really need to start doing work,
Right.
And it was a okay money. It wasn't great, and it just evolved from that to becoming the chief communications officer, and we sold for $1 billion to Atkins in less than 10 years.
That's fantastic. What a great story.
Yeah, and it was a great ride. I mean, a virgin company, brand new, no one knew us.
Well, what sports nutrition products do you personally like to use, and what about Quest products do you believe was important in their success and their customers?
For sure. Well, I think at the time Quest launched, and if you had any history with protein bars, sometimes they were just okay, chalky.
Right. Yeah.
Quest, we managed to figure out the taste and the texture and the clean ingredients. Because when you ate it, you were like, this is pretty good. And you flipped it over, and the ingredients were clean, no added sugars. And I think that was the key. And nothing like that was on the market. Mm-hmm. Everything before that was slightly a variation of crappy.
Okay.
And that was the key. And then obviously, and I tell people to this day, if you have a consumable item, whether it's a food, a drink, we got product in people's hands. If I ran into you at the gym, I gave you a bar. I gave you actually 2 bars. This is for you, Ben, and this is for your friend or whoever in your life. And that's really that was one of our key marketing tools, getting product in people's hands.
Oh, that's fantastic. So let's talk about law enforcement, because it's something you were attracted to. What really attracted you to it, and what would you say, hey, I got to make this a career? Was it just being in Jersey and the family, or what was behind it really?
Well, I think when you're a young lady, a young boy, whatever, and you want to, we all think, hey, I'm going to be a doctor or a fireman, right? We all have these fantasies, and I thought my neighbor was this strapping state trooper. My uncle was a confident man, and he liked helping people. And I just said, I want to do that. I want to be able to serve the public, and it happened.
Okay.
And I think I was very unique. I think even early on, and I was told this, I was interviewed recently about this, I think you go down 2 paths as a police officer, and that's why I think there's bad cops, right? The media shines on those. It's a public relations job. It's not just enforcing the law. And I always said this, there's the letter of law and the spirit of law. I've always lived in the spirit of law. There's always someone doing something, and you have to really sit back and judge, okay, who am I to really judge you, right? Mm-hmm. So anyone I worked with, I said, listen, a lot of people are a paycheck away from a crisis. So let's look at those people like that. And so my world has never been black. It's always been gray. And that's why I think I did very well as a police officer, because I like helping people. And I also was smart enough to know, do I really want to mess up this person's life over a couple ounces of marijuana or something that is really insignificant in the whole scope of things? And I think if there was more cops that thought like that, it'd be a better place.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So the LAPD has sometimes a famous reputation. And you just mentioned it. What do you think? So the police and society should be more public relations, or how do you solve that problem with the image that the police forces have around the United States?
Well, the problem is, and it's you go to the academy I went for 6 months or some 12 weeks, 8 weeks. You're taught in the academy. You get out and you're with a training officer, and fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of the training officers are a little cynical already. They've been doing it for 5 or 6 years, and it's almost a generational thing. They've been taught how to be kind of a little bit of hard ass, and you have to break that cycle. You need these young kids to get out of the academy and say, listen, there's good people out there. Not everyone's a bad person, and you have to treat them accordingly. And that's how I conduct whether it's a traffic stop or whether it's a drug stop, or I respect people until they disrespect me, and then you just have to change gears and say, okay, how do I deal with this? But it's not always about use of force. I love talking people into jail. It's just easier, right? Who wants to roll around on the street? But I think it all starts in the academy. They instill the rules. You go with a training officer, and they're like, hey, here's how we do this. We're rough, we're tough, we're bad people, or they're bad people, we're on the other side, and you almost have to switch the dynamics of that.
So more education.
Education, public relations, how to communicate better, So,
okay.
But it's a problem.
So you were a protection agent for many years. You touched on that, and you've seen a lot of crazy stuff. Share some of the most crazy examples so my listeners have a better feel of what you've seen. I know you've done the Grammys, the Emmys, you've dealt with pro athletes, etc. Tell me about security detail, some stories you've seen.
It's interesting. I've done so many talent. When Tommy Mottola ran Sony Music, I was fortunate enough I picked up a lot of the Sony artists, Mariah Carey, Ricky Martin, J-Lo. I think a lot of it, for the most part, is pretty mundane, boring. But then there's the reality of behind the scenes. A lot of people know. A lot of people have stalkers. People show up at events unannounced. I've had, when we did early on with Kim Kardashian, a guy showed up. He packed his bags and took a bus from Alabama and showed up at her front door and it's like, hey, I'm here to live with you. You know, those are more like scary, like real life, like
that
people.
is scary.
That doesn't make the news. Those are the more interesting where you have to deal with psychology and interventions. And then, of course, there's occasional, like as you'll see on the news now with TMZ, people trying to get in someone's property and break down. So those are real life things.
And that's the thing that people have discussions. I see a lot of influencers or big businessmen. And I had this conversation when I went live on social media. Do you show family? Do you show kids? Do you show spouses, girlfriends on social media? I see a lot of people do. Is that safe? Is that a good idea with some of the crazies out there in the world?
And it's interesting.
You expose yourself.
I still advise a lot of people on that. One thing I tell people, especially if you're a high profile person, never post in real time, obviously. If you're going to Disneyland, do that, post the next day. It's a personal choice. Some people feel like I want to live my life. I mean, I actually sometimes feel sorry for famous people because they got the fame because they want to be an actor, but they didn't want to necessarily be a public figure. So they walk a fine line. If I was famous, I don't know how much I might. There's some that don't not their kids are not on any social media. I think that's just a personal choice, and they have to weigh out the odds, right?
Right.
Of being a target or for extortion or anything, right? I'd be a little worried about kidnapping. So I have some clients that people know they have kids, but you'll never see where they are. They go to school. No one knows anything about them.
Right.
Which is the safer way, right?
Right. Of course, it's like don't post them, don't show them. That way, if the kids are walking around, no one targets them.
And it's interesting. I even tell younger kids that have some level of fame, it's easy to find out where someone lives. They post and it shows the street sign or you have to really be smart about that. And I have a couple clients that have been robbed at gunpoint because they post starting the Ferrari every morning and showing their, Panerai watch or whatever watch. And next thing you know, people, oh, wait, I know where that is. I saw it with the street he just drove by.
Right.
And I've had 2 clients that have been robbed recently for thousands upon thousands of dollars.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, like you said, protection agent police work can be boring at times.
90% of the time.
How do especially when you're in protection? Okay, there's got to be downtime. How do you keep your mind sharp and how you stay engaged while not getting distracted in your head when you're doing your job?
I'm known as I'm a planner. I'm always saying about the ingress and egress and what we're doing. And even though maybe we're sitting around for a couple hours waiting for them to come out of a meeting, well, where are we going next? And checking the location again and the route. I like staying. You have to stay busy in what you're doing. Even if you're working 8 hours, there's 8 hours of time. Especially if you're well known or a successful CEO, you're going to be bouncing to 6 different meetings, right? So you want to make sure everything's pre-planned. Even, okay, we're going to enter a day at a restaurant. Is the restaurant still accommodating us going through the back door? Has anything changed? So it's pretty easy to stay busy mentally.
We had Byron Rogers on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Who's a protection agent.
I know Byron.
And he's really good.
Yeah.
And he said one of the hardest parts that he has to teach his mentees or people that work for him is how to separate out the personal relationship with the client to doing your job. Is that a tough task because you want to be personable, you want them to have a good relationship and rapport, but you also want to keep your distance too.
So
how do you deal with that?
I'm glad you asked that because I'm an expert in that. I've had clients for 10 years straight, and all they know is my name is Bruce. And people find that hard to believe. They'll say, "What do you talk about?" Nothing. If I take you to dinner and you're my client, and you're okay, Ben, we're going to sit you over in this corner. I'll be at the bar. Great. Do you ever? And I've been off. Hey, do you want to come join us? No, thank you. I'll be at the bar. I say the same sentence day in and day out. The problem is with some security agents, they feel. I lost a couple accounts. One of the big ace players in Hollywood, I sent one of my guys to Mexico with her for a video shoot, and he got too comfortable. And they fired when they came back. He said it started out great, but then by the last night he was sitting at dinner table drinking wine. And those are conversations you have. But I think human beings, we all want to be liked, right? We're like, well, but Ben was talking to me. He must like me.
Right.
I always tell this to agents, especially. They're just being nice. They're not thinking about you on that level. They're thinking about business deals and other things. Don't mistake their kindness for anything other than just kindness.
Yeah, they're just good people.
You're nice people.
They're like, hey, you're protecting me. I want to be respectful.
Sure. And it's interesting. I even try and educate people on conversations. Just because a client says, "How was your day?" It's great, ma'am. Keep going. There's nothing else to say.
Right.
No one really truly wants to hear your problems. They have their own problems. Exactly. But it's hard for people to get that in their brain, wrap that around. Mm-hmm. But I've done well for years and years. It's the same conversation.
Oh, that's
there is
good.
none.
There is none.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I have to think if you're younger, that would be a tough thing to.
You're
to
younger, or you're clients working out in the gym and you feel compelled to give them advice or something. And I've lost clients based on someone's conduct like that.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're involved in a lot of LA-based charities,
Uh-huh.
and share more about the organization you're involved with, and how can others support them?
Well, there's a couple. The Midnight Mission, I did something like 10, 12 years ago. They feed 2,000 people a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I go down, I just usually get a group of people. It's always on the holidays, Thanksgiving morning before things get going, Christmas morning, Christmas Eve, Easter. And it's just one of the ones I've adopted, and I have a group of friends that I wrangle to, sometimes force them to go, but they go. But it's fun. To me, if you have the means to give back, why not? And then there's Trina's Kids, which is downtown LA. They're mostly back to school programs, underprivileged kids, and they put like backpack programs and stuff. I mean, listen, I was fortunate. I was raised middle class. We didn't have a lot of money, but I didn't know we didn't want for anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you see kids that don't have what we had as like basic stuff, you're like, well, how's that even happen? Especially in America. So I feel compelled to why wouldn't we do that, right? At some level,
Right.
it's a personal choice.
What's the best way to support those two?
Well, Midnight Mission has a website. Trina's Kids they're on Instagram. They do Trina's Kids is fun. I mean, they have a lot of influencers come. It's just a good time.
That's great.
My friend Dan Fleischman got me involved with that.
So let's switch gears and talk about your new company, which I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah.
Okay. You sent me a case to the office. We're almost out.
Okay.
Huge hit.
Cool.
What transitioned into the new company, Legendary? Explain to everyone what it is.
Yeah.
But also, I'm a huge fan. It's one of my favorites. It's a type of protein type product where it's hard just to eat one.
There you go.
It really is. I have to be honest. There's the different sweet rolls Bruce carries. He's got these Pop-Tart versions, and it's like I'm a kid again, but I'm getting protein for my sugar rush.
Right. So as we were towards the end of Quest, we knew we were gonna do something else. And Ron, the founder, basically started Legendary Foods, and it started out just nuts and nut butters. And in the last, I guess 2 years ago, we started making these health. If you can imagine a healthy pastry, healthy Pop-Tart, whatever you want to call it. But I always tell people as a layman, hey, have you had a Pop-Tart growing up as a kid? Imagine now a Pop-Tart with 20 grams of protein, gluten-free, and low carb. So that's our theme. And I think we have 8 flavors of pastries now, 3 flavors of sweet rolls. I always compare those to like a Cinnabon if you go through the airport and smell those, except everything is, high protein, low carb, gluten-free. We have some cool, I sum it up this way. You go to a Super Bowl party, the normal, the Oreos, the Doritos, the Dominoes, the Hot Pockets. We will eventually have a table over here where you'll see Legendary, because we're going to have Hot Pockets and chips and Pringles type chips and all those cool things. And that's our goal. So I think we learned a lot from building Quest. And even though it was $1 billion company, there was much more runway to do. So now we're taking that and now making Legendary even bigger and better.
That's great.
Yeah.
So the next round of products is more consumables. Getting
Yeah.
away from the pastries.
Yeah, we'll always have pastries. That's our base. But the sweet rolls, I literally, when I say a Hot Pocket, like a Hot Pocket, except
Okay.
all, and Pringles and chips and light, airy chips. And just, it's going to be endless. And I always tell people, going to 7-Eleven, it's going to 7-Eleven, and everything you want to buy there, you'll eventually be able to buy.
And we'll all have protein.
All protein. We're never going to get away from that.
When's the new SKUs coming out?
Over the next, the chips will be out in about 4 months.
Wow.
But over the next year, you'll see 2 or 3 more items. Vitamin Shop, GNC. We're getting now into 7-Eleven and a lot of the convenience stores, and grocery now, of course, Albertsons and Kroger's.
What's the timeline when you decided to do this, and then your first round of products came out? How long did that take?
Months and months and months. R&D is the biggest thing. I was talking to Ron the other day, and he said, how many variations of these pastries do you think we made? I had no idea. I think he said 4,000.
Wow.
You make them, try it, no, it's no good. So sometimes the R&D process, and it's interesting, even at Quest, we would try something, and I'd be, that's really good. Is that going to go to market? And it would just disappear. It never made it to the finish line.
Really?
So the R&D is the hardest part, because we want to have it perfect.
Uh-huh.
And we're always improving, right? But so I could tell you it could take 2 months, it could take 2 years to get something to market.
How does that work? Because if people are tasting it, everyone has different taste buds and perceptions and views and likes and dislikes. How do you decide what goes to market?
Well, obviously we have a pretty big R&D department, and I think it's overall, we've been doing it so long. I mean, yeah, well, and by the way, we advance samples to buyers and people that are going to be buying it, and some of them make that decision, right? They'll sway us, hey, that's not really where we think we should go, and we'll revamp it. I mean, listen, one thing we found, you're never going to please everybody, right?
Right, of course.
So you have to go sometimes with the statistical data that's going to show, okay, this looks like it's going to do okay based on the numbers of what we're getting back.
Where can you buy Legendary?
Vitamin Shop, GNC, Amazon, Legendary website, and then an array of grocery stores.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So the name of the show is I Own It. It's being responsible for every aspect of your life. Can you go back and look and say, what was an example where you didn't own it? You just didn't own your life and you're struggling and couldn't take responsibility for who you were.
Which time? Well, I filed bankruptcy because when I had the security business, it's interesting. The relationships I have now, I didn't realize. As smart as I thought I was, I didn't know a lot about business. Does that make sense? Like I had the business, money was coming in, but all of a sudden the accounts it started getting larger. I remember one time a young lady who just did my book. She was just a bookkeeper, worked from her house. Said, "Hey, Bruce, payroll's due Friday, and it's $75,000." I was like, "Okay." She goes, "You only have 40 in the bank." I go, "Well, how's that work?"
Right.
Because I had people owed me money.
Right.
And I scrambled, and the people I know now, I didn't know, so I couldn't call Pedro's or Dan Fleischman and say, "Hey, how do I get a credit line, or how would I borrow money?"
Right.
I panicked. I cashed out my pension from the LAPD to pay my payroll. That was a big learning lesson.
Right.
So I failed there for sure. I didn't even have the knowledge to know what to do or who to ask. I mean, my dad had already passed away, and I think it was almost more embarrassing, right?
Right.
I can't make payroll. What? So that was complete failure, and I ended up in bankruptcy court over that. And then another was, then a divorce followed that, so I didn't own that either.
Right.
But I gave her everything. So I've had my share of failures that I own,
And everyone know that in order to fail allows you to step forward significantly. Because look at that. All of a sudden you do a good deed, you get involved in Quest,
Right.
You have Legendary, and you
exactly.
have a lot of other businesses.
And now I at least know if I needed money. Okay, I know how to call. I knew how to get a hold of a banker. I have a banker now. I know how do I get a credit line? All the things it's really it's embarrassing. I didn't know.
But it's a learning process.
Yeah.
That's what life is about.
Yeah.
So that's great.
That was one big own it.
So what's the best way to follow you?
Don't follow me home, but you can follow me on Instagram.
Well, I would be worried. If someone follows you home, I think you're going to take care
we'll
of this.
take care of that. No,
Right.
I mean, Instagram, Bruce E. Cardenas. And then I just started with Jake. We know Jake. He's helped me build a website. It's brucecardenas.com.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that's going to be my focal point because I'm working on public speaking and coaching. I think.
Great.
Yeah, I think I want to do that.
When's that coming out?
The website's done. Jake's helped me with some speaking, a deck, if you will. And I'm just working on it, getting some gigs, if you will, right?
Cool.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And podcasts are great, right? Because it's a great conversation.
It's the best.
Yeah.
What I love about this podcast is the people, their stories, and the knowledge they contribute to my life, which also contributes to our audience life.
And that's how I feel even about me doing speaking or coaching, whatever. If I could share one thing with someone, hence that my bankruptcy, right? Hey, here's what you shouldn't do.
Right.
I feel like if I could bring any knowledge to anyone on how, or even how to start a company, right? I've always said
you'll impact someone.
Yeah. And I always say this, I'm not looking to be right. I'm just looking for the right answer. And if I can help people find the right answer, it brings, it's a self, fulfilling thing for me too. It feels good. It's not just about compensation. I like to see people do well in life.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's what separates you from the pack. That's why you own it.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap up with our 3 questions.
Okay.
Normally we have a couch here. So how old are you now?
Oh, wow. We're going there.
Well, we got to go there.
I just turned 60.
Okay. You're young.
Yeah.
Just turned 60. You get on the couch. I said, lay on the couch, Bruce. Close your eyes. Go back to when you were 16 years old. All your experiences, the ups, the downs, the relationships, the people you've met. Now that you could talk to your 16-year-old self, what advice are you giving your 16-year-old self, knowing what you know now at the age of 60?
Save money. I've blown more money. One of the key things, I got hit by, it won't bore you too, but sidetrack. I got hit by a car when I was 7 years old running across the street. It turned into a lawsuit, a cab.
I got hit when I was 6 years old.
It ended up I had a settlement when I turned 18 of, let's say, $12,000, $13,000, right? My dad said, I don't know a lot about the stock market, but I heard you may want to look into that. Come on, Dad. I bought a used Corvette. If I go back in time and calculate what Warren Buffett would have done with that $12,000, where I'd be today. So I think I've wasted a lot of money. So 16 years old, and I made a lot of, even I had a paper route, I was working, but I didn't save enough money. I should have saved more money. That's one takeaway for sure.
Okay.
And then I think be more organized in my business endeavors. I've never really been that organized.
Okay.
I kind of go by the seat of my pants, and I wish I was more organized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So it's our last day on Earth, God forbid.
Yeah.
It's just me and you.
Okay.
Your choice. What's our last meal? What are we eating and what are we drinking?
Wow. So I'm boring because I don't drink alcohol.
Right. Or do I anymore?
Oh, cool.
Even though I collect wine, I do it sparingly.
Yeah. Yeah. I like, matter of fact, I
Yeah.
collect a little bit of wine too,
Yeah.
just for friends. But wow, I'm a Coke Zero kind of guy, and a
Okay.
ribeye,
Okay.
and a big baked potato.
Oh, I like that.
And if it's the
Sounds
last
good.
day, we might as well have a pint of Haagen-Dazs, right?
Well,
'Cause
yeah, you might as well.
there's
throw
no
in
calorie
desserts.
counting.
That's right. That's right. I love that. So you see our studio.
It's
We have
gorgeous.
a grand. Thank you. I really appreciate that. We have a grand piano, a drum set, and guitars behind me. We can bring in any band or musician that you like. They could be living or deceased to play us a song. Who would you bring in right now to play us a song? Your choice.
I would bring in Sting.
Okay.
I do know him,
Okay.
and I did some work for him. But if you want to hear something really funny,
Sure.
I got in a friend of mine. I got a lot of my work from a guy named Charlie who started a company called CLS Transportation.
Uh-huh.
Calls me one day and says, "Hey, we need to take Sting to the Bowl. He's performing in Hollywood."
Okay.
Me just at the hotel, and I got in the car in the back seat, and Sting was back there, and Charlie said, "This is Bruce." He used the word he's with the police, and Sting says, "Oh, I used to be with the police too,"
Right.
because hence his
That's
band.
it, right.
So that was kind of a nice kickoff to us working together. We've worked together a few times.
Okay.
But I admire, he's a talented, amazing artist. He's just someone I enjoy his music. I mean, there's so many others, right?
Yeah.
But he's just one I think.
That was one of the first concerts I ever saw was Police Synchronicity.
Really?
Yeah.
I just saw him as a residency, and I saw him in Vegas about 6 months ago.
Uh-huh.
But the first concert ever was the Doobie Brothers when I was a senior.
Oh, okay.
And they're still around.
They used to play at a place called Ravinia
Yeah.
in Chicago for years. They're fantastic.
But I like that, so crazy. I don't know how to play the guitar,
Uh-huh.
but a couple of my clients gifted me guitars. So I have like
Uh-huh.
3 guitars
Oh, that's cool.
from famous people. So
Nice.
anyway,
Well, thank you for coming down.
thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Ben Reinberg I Own It show. If you're interested in seeing more episodes like with Bruce Cardenas, drop kick that right-hand lower button and click subscribe. Feel free to keep clicking on the like button. The more you click on the like button, the more this content will be shared with everyone around the world so you can enjoy some of the knowledge that Bruce has offered as well as other guests we have on the show. Feel free to follow me on benreinberg.com. I'm all over social media. And if you want to learn about commercial real estate, go to alliancecgc.com and feel free to log on. We have a brand new fund, the Alliance Medical Property Fund, that we're raising equity for, and love to see if we can help you build wealth passively through commercial real estate. So thanks again for joining us. And Bruce, what a pleasure. Really
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
I loved it.
Thank you for listening to the I Own It podcast with Ben Reinberg. To hear our past episodes and connect with Ben, visit benreinberg.com.